Send.
All right, welcome. I'm very excited to have a proper Irishman and a proper Wim Hof instructor with us. So, Leo, first and foremost, thank you for making the time. I love the shadow behind you that tells us already a lot about you. I can see you're a guy who likes to hang out there.
It's funny that the difference that I saw was the pasty white background and the pasty white skin of an Irishman versus the beautiful yellow hues and gorgeous tan of a man that spends his time in Bali, right?
I am, but I'm in Paris. So this is my dad's office in the suburb of Paris. So
Oh, nice.
believe me, if we were in Bali, you could say more about my background. But we would hear frogs and roosters, and trying to do a live can be challenging. Internet works whenever it wants to work. So we are blessed for the good technology. So very excited. Thank you so much, first and foremost, to take the time. This is a new connection, so I appreciate that you take a leap of faith and engage in this chat with me. So let me start by sharing my intention. My intention is to understand what's going on, because you're not only a Wim Hof instructor, but you're an athlete. You're working with athletes. You have a passion for self-improvement and helping others connect deeply with themselves. So I'm really interested in hearing your motivation in all you do, but also understand a little bit about the science behind it all and how you work with athletes and overall what's going on in the world. Have people caught up with these practices and all these things? So that's my intention. But let's start and rewire a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do, who you are, all these kind of things.
Yeah, sure, Alex. Well, listen, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I think these are great and wonderful times that we live in. I got to thank COVID, because without that, I wouldn't be talking to you right here and now. I'd be busy training someone and working with someone, or off with a family, or doing something else. And so I do look for the opportunity and the ray of light in every situation that I possibly can. Sometimes it takes a few days to get to do that. And that's all right too. But that's the beautiful thing about breathing and about cold exposure and that whole side of life and of health is it really helps you to connect more deeply with yourself. It's what kind of in the end, what I figured out, what drew me to Wim's work was connecting more deeply to yourself, to others, and to nature. Or love is at the highest end of his method, which is beautiful.
He's really embodying love, huh? Yeah, he's really beyond everything and all that. He's just a lovely chap. It's just it's just pleasant to be with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't help but be at ease and be yourself and have fun and just see where that takes you to. And there's more that I've learned in general from experience in life than I would say from any book, any course, doing anything like that. It's just the experience of going through something and then connecting with people and gleaning their insights and sharing your insights. That's how I learn. That's how I love to learn. So
yeah, fully agree. So tell us a little bit about your work. What are your range of offerings?
Sure. Well, what I would consider myself as is in my career is as a personal trainer and then as a breathing coach. Now, that's an interesting term, I consider, because I don't think there's many of us out there. And even if we're talking to a couple of hundred people today, that is not many in the world of almost 1 trillion people.
Yeah.
But I kind of spent, I had childhood asthma is my story and very bad asthma as a kid. And it was through the Buteyko method that I cured my own asthma. And then I went on, became a fitness instructor, a personal trainer. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I went back to study the breath because I just knew that it was a missing piece in my practice. And when I really started to peel back the different layers from Buteyko and Oxygen Advantage and Wim Hof, holotropic, rebirthing, radiance, all these different breathing techniques, I thought, wow, these are weird and wonderful things. And I did what they have done in the strength and conditioning world, which is they have made out a phased plan of training. They found the principles the baseline principles of how all these things work and meld together. And that's what I wanted to do with breathing, was find out how it all works together, how I create a program for people that is effective but also gentle. I wanted to learn how to work with the most vulnerable people, and how to protect the weakest person in the room, because as you well know, some of these techniques can be very powerful and potent, and you gotta learn how to look after them. So that kind of amalgamated into what I do now, which is breath coaching for the most part. So it's not that I run a lot of, I know a lot of breath workers will run retreats and weekends, and they'll have an immersion session and an immersion kind of environment around the breath work. I don't do so much of that at this point in my life. What I prefer to do is peel back the layers of the onion, and I prefer to show people how to restore their whole breathing system and then use it for life and then for sports performance.
Cool. So you do one-on-ones more than groups?
Mostly, yeah. For most of my life, I've done one-on-one work. Kind of the last 6 years, I find. Do you know what it is? I love one-on-one because the depth of experience that you get from it is amazing. And then more
who are
recent.
your clients? Who are the people who come to you? What is the profile of the people who come to you?
Do you know what? It's very many, and I always had this. I had this look when I was a trainer as well. Like you'll know by me, I'm not a huge, big, muscly guy. I was never a professional athlete. I never got into the gym for looks reasons or for sports performance, which is quite unusual. I got into it because I was so sick with the asthma when I was a kid, and I just loved physical exercise and activity, and so I never really connected with people for a long, long time until I found that it was people who had a great passion for what they were doing in life, whether that was for sport, but also sometimes it was just people like your normal average person who just want to do something cool with their life, whether it was, climb mountains bare-chested, run marathons, compete in a particular sport, do a little adventure. But they also had a lot of issues going on in their life. They either had a lot of injuries in their physical body, or their physical body was breaking down in some way. So they're the types of people. So I now call them sports people with breathing issues. That's who I connect with most. In other words, people who value training, value the long-term commitment to peeling back layers of themselves, and at the same time, they have a goal, or they have a passion that they pursue.
Before we dive deeper into the ice, which I know you're passionate about, some people are not always familiar with all the terms we use. Can you briefly explain to us what is Buteyko and how did the method help you cure asthma?
Well, I was about 18 or 19 years of age. I'd finished school here, and I went into university where I was studying computers, which I hated. 12 hours a day sitting at a PC was just not my cup of tea. And at the same time, my body completely broke down. I was in bed for a total of 6 months, bedridden, with chest infections and asthma attacks. I was on 3 inhalers a day. I took about, if I remember right, it was about 12 to 14 courses of antibiotics in a year, and over 425 steroid tablets in 1 year. And I went to the GP and I says, listen, I have an interest in changing career and becoming a fitness trainer. What do you think? And he just laughed at me. He says, Leo, if we wrap you up in bubble wrap and put you away in a room for 5 years, we don't know if you're going to get better. He was like, we've done everything we can medically. There was no other options in asthma medication to go for. It was just managing my life. And he says, look, the one thing I'll do is I get you an appointment with a respiratory consultant, who was one of the best in Ireland, still is. And but that, like the medical community does, is it takes its time. It would take over a year before I'd see that person. So I walked out of that office just completely hopeless and despondent, and giving up on life, because I knew I didn't have my dreams of becoming a elite level sports person was going down the tubes. In fact, I didn't even want to play sport because I was that sick. I was in a career I hated. I didn't particularly like any aspect of my life that I was leading. And but it was about a month later, I came across, my mom phoned me up and said, Leo, the Buteyko method is after come to Ireland. It's this method that has clinical trials and research in asthma. It's supposed to be really good. Would you be interested in it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Let's go do this. And this was back in 2004. So for those that might know, Patrick McKeown had just come back in about 2002. I think he qualified with Dr. Buteyko over in Russia. And he is one of the main leaders in that method to bring that method to the Western world. So I was in one of his earliest cohorts in about, I believe it was 2004, if I remember right. It was 2003, 2004. And
with Patrick himself.
He just, yeah.
He's a legend now.
Patrick.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a legend based on a lot of hard work. It's funny because I still keep in contact with him. He's a brilliant guy. Like, I have a lot of time for him, but he's put a lot into trying to get breathing in the map. And, you know, I've spoken to him for over many years, and it's been interesting to see how breathing has become, especially in the last 3 years, it's just gone.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always like that for him and for people
I think because
who are around.
It all came with Wim Hof, you know, because it was kind of the opposite of what Wim Hof was, or not opposite, but very different. And people tend to like to opposite things in life. So they just brought one again. So he got a lot of publicity from that. I know people ask him all the time, and your relation with Wim Hof and your relation with Wim Hof. So I think Wim did a lot for everybody in the breathing industry. And I think Patrick went on that as well.
I think the saying is all ships rise with a rising tide. Yeah, so all ships float with a rising tide. So what Wim has done is absolutely incredible as well. Like, as a one-man band, and a lot of what I know, they would like to think that it's the science that has raised Wim's profile, but for me, it's the man himself. It was always about the man. Yeah, he's the one that set 26 Guinness World Records. He's the one that dealt with. I'll call it post-traumatic stress from his wife passing away. He was the one that took the bull by the horns and challenged the scientific community. For me, it's about him.
He's from another planet. No? But, before we continue on Wim, I just want to not lose track on what is the Buteyko method.
So the Buteyko method it was originated by a Russian doctor. Back in the 1950s, and it's based on the physiology of breathing. That's the best way to describe it. And what he noticed with himself when he was given a diagnosis of fatal high blood pressure back in the 1950s. So he was told he only had 6 months to live back in the 1960s, and there was nothing medical community could do for him, and he was a doctor. But at the same time, he noticed that as his patients were nearing the end of their life, as they were on their deathbed, that their breathing completely became distorted and changed to chronic mouth breathing and chest breathing with that. So he kind of, in his office, I mean, the story goes as he was in his office one day and he got a light bulb moment and decided, well, what if I did the opposite to what all these guys are doing? And instead of breathing big, I breathe less. So he started to bring in breath holding techniques and breathing less. And he felt immediately a difference in the pain in his body and in the symptoms he was receiving. So he started to get to work on himself, and he noticed, holy shit. And then he did the opposite, and he started breathing more, and he found all these symptoms came back. So that set him off on a 10, 15-year career of finding out from the physiology of breathing is what the hell is going on here, and how can I help patients with different diseases get better? So he used to pull patients in off the ward, asthma, high blood pressure, diabetes, all these, like, it was a myriad of diseases that he dealt with. And he developed his method from there, which is pretty much based on calm, relaxed breathing, real subtle breathing combined with a variety of breath holding exercises. So on the face of it, it's a complete opposite to Wim Hof, where he's like, hey, breathe big, breathe, just breathe through your nose, through your mouth. It doesn't fucking matter, just breathe. versus Buteyko, which was very structured, and he did want you to breathe in a particular manner, and that was calm breathing and relaxed breathing.
And just for everyone, and please correct me, but the idea behind it is that the quality of oxygenation of your organs depend on your level of CO2 in your blood, and we are always focused on the oxygen level. But when you are breathing heavily in one form or another, you get rid of too much CO2. That consequently leads to having not a great optimization of oxygenation of your organs. And when you all of a sudden you breathe softly, now you are optimizing that delivery. So is that correct?
Yeah, in a nutshell, that's absolutely right. Like the analogy I use is carbon dioxide holds the hand of oxygen to get from the blood into the cell. You see, we don't have an issue unless you're very sick with a particular virus, or you've just moved to altitude. You don't have an issue with oxygen in your body. And what you breathe is an oxygen. What you breathe is air. There's only 21% oxygen in air. There's a lot of other stuff in air too. And when you actually use that air out of every breath, you're only using about 3.5% of that as oxygen at rest. So with every breath you take, you're only using 3.5% oxygen. That's all. And yet our blood is fully saturated with oxygen. We have no issues with it. So the question then becomes, oh, if we've no issue with oxygen, then what's going on? And what goes on very often in chronic long-term breathing, I call it adapted breathing patterns, is that oxygen can't get released from the blood into the cell. And you need carbon dioxide to hold its hand and let it go and let it filter into the cell itself.
And in your career working with athletes, would you say that's the number one issue that you notice? Chronic mouth breathing, is that still the case? You know, you also always see these athletes, you know, that rhythm. I don't know, I did some at just amateur level, but that's how I was taught to breathe, you know, 1 inhale, 2 exhale. And you know,
and do you know what, in a trained person, that's perfectly fine to fight off fatigue. That's the funniest thing, is that, and that's where a lot of my research has come over the last 6 years, is there's nothing wrong with being taught that if your breathing works efficiently in your everyday life. But the problem is that most people's breathing does not work efficiently because of how life changes your breath and alters your breath, because of the way we breathe 19,500 times a day, and because of the way we think about stress and the way that manifests in the body.
So Leo, do you tape every evening?
I don't. Nope.
Because you train yourself, you don't need any more? Or you...
Bingo. So now, if you look at my anatomy, if you look at my face, I got a very thin nose, very narrow nostril passages. I've got a very thin bone structure. A lot of that is that they would, when you look at how humans have developed over time, a lot of these are anatomical adaptations to my life. In other words, my face has grown like that because of the way I was brought up as a child, because of the amount of breastfeeding I had, because of the amount of solid food I ate, because of the amount of mouth breathing I did as a kid. That all actually changed the shape of my anatomy, which means that even for me at this stage, I do have narrow airways, I do have narrow nostrils, so it's quite difficult for me to breathe easy when I'm really going flat out in sport. But even for me, I can train a very high level by focusing in on the breath and by training the breath specifically. So everybody's a little bit different. And when it comes to athletes, I think that you're right. It's one of the, do you know what? It's one of the biggest areas that athletes haven't looked at yet. And that's why there's so much opportunity there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. When you know the studies now, there's plenty of science supporting it. It's pretty wild. Leo, I want to dive into the ice, because I think I saw recently a really nice video you explaining how you take the ice bath. So let's dive, because of the way you work with athletes. I would like to have your take on whether ice bath is good or not for athletes. And I know that's another topic that is heavily debated, because there are some benefits of the ice bath, but also there are plenty of studies that also show the negative effect of ice baths. I don't know if you are familiar with them, and if you want to touch about that.
Yeah, again, and by the way, I do work with athletes. I'm in Ireland, and we don't have many. I'm going to be honest with you. Our our population is not that big and not that well organized compared to, let's say, France, even compared to the States, compared to some of the bigger nations of the world. So this stuff applies as much, and this is the funny thing with both breath and ice. They are two things that are how should I put this? They are two things that apply to absolutely everybody. In other words, cold exposure in ice is a stressor to every single human being on the planet, whether you're an athlete or whether you're a non-athlete. And everybody needs to breathe efficiently, no matter who you are, as an absolute baseline. And then you can capitalize on that. But when it comes to athletes, for me, when I look at the research, I think that the understanding of the researchers has a lot to be desired in the way they construct and design the research itself. For example, I haven't come across any research that would, a lot of them measure the amount of time in the ice that somebody spends and the effects of the ice, but nobody looks at what is the person doing when they're in the ice.
Yeah.
For example, it's a completely different experience to be in the ice and going like
you do it very well. You know what? Exactly, and that's why, you know, if you go on Wikipedia and you ask, you know, how long can you live in the ice, I think it's 8 minutes. And if you fall from a boat in ice cold water, they would say 8 minutes. And then you've got, you know, some crazy Dutchman who spends 2 hours in it. So
yeah. And that's the thing, is that they don't look at the quality of the ice immersion and how the body responds to the ice, because that for me is where it's all at. I don't care if you last 30 seconds or you last 40 minutes. The question for me is, what's going on for you in the ice, and how are you when you get out of the ice? So for me, the ice is, and I use it quite a lot as I use it as a measure of how resilient you are to general stress. Because as I said, the cold is a stressor to everybody. So if you can't handle the cold as a stress, then it has analogies and it has crossovers to how you handle stress in life.
Yeah.
And then it's also a training tool for how to develop that resilience as well.
But okay, and you said it, there's no real good studies on the lengths. But what I read is that if you spend too long in the ice, that it has a negative effect on muscle growth. So yes, you are reducing inflammation getting in the ice, but maybe 2 minutes is enough. If you're an athlete, you know, then you're getting the stressor, and yes, you're coming down the nervous system without jeopardizing all these efforts you're doing at the gym. Would that say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, like the goal of a gym is to break down the body. The goal of being in the gym, when you're in the gym itself, is to cause stress. It's to cause inflammation. You want that to happen, because from there, the body's then repair systems, when you recover, the body comes in and then repairs. And when it repairs, it becomes even more resilient and develops pathways to make you more resilient, whether that's building a better nervous system or more muscle or a better response system. So if you go and train and kill it in the gym, and then you're adding a further similar stress on top of that. So for example, if you're looking for muscle growth and then you get into an ice bath afterwards, the studies would show is that it's not that effective. It's not a good complement to it. But again, this is looking where we're trying to isolate different parts of life and look and see what these two reactions are like. And for me, just as a coach, that's not how I see people respond in practice. I find that the ice is magnificent for recovery afterwards. And if you really need to put on a lot of muscle, I'm like, okay, then the ice is not your focus in your training. You should leave it be. But if you're looking to train long term, and this is just part of your long term training plan, like, yeah, absolutely, I'd be doing ice to help with recovery so that you can then go and train again the next day and the next day and the next day. And
How
let me give you an
often?
example.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me give you an example of this even going back to, I know there was Poland, where I believe the first country to start doing this. This is going back to at least 2001, 2002, where they would have they would bring their athletes in, dress them in cotton, so cotton pants and cotton slippers, and they would go into a deep freezer where it was down as far as, I believe, like minus 250 degrees. And they would literally walk around that room for the guts of 5 minutes. Then they would go into the next room, which is a gym. They go in and train really hard in the gym. Then they would go back into the ice room in the deep freezer. Then they go back into the gym, because what they used was, okay, stress yourself in the gym, recover a little bit. Stress yourself more, recover a little bit. Stress yourself more. So you end up getting a much better rehabilitation, a much better performance result from the overall session.
Wow. Yeah, I see Wim
Yeah.
training, and he's got his chest freezer where he's running around.
Yeah.
10 kilometer in one way, 10 kilometer, because he was training for North Pole or shit like that. You know.
Yeah, like I do a lot of that stuff for like a heat and cold training, and mixing that with the gym as well. It's another, think of it like it's another training modality for you to consider. You can train your nervous system and cardiovascular system specifically through the cold, and a lot of people don't do that. So you can now use that in combination with your gym work and get the best out of both worlds.
What do you do every day? What's your routine?
I don't do the same thing every day. That's the first thing I'll say, is because I think there's too many wonderful things in life to keep a strict routine. There's too much beauty to enjoy. Some of the basic things I will do is I do some sort of breathing. I'll always do a breath awareness where I check in with my breath and see how my system is, because it's a baseline for my overall health and immune system.
Would that be a bolt test? Would that be something?
No, the bolt test, which is from Buteyko and the Oxygen Advantage, I don't even use a test anymore, because I'm sensitive to my own body. I know what it's like now. So I don't, like, for me, metrics like heart rates, bolt tests, HRV, all that stuff is good when you're starting off, but we have all that knowledge inside us.
Yeah,
we have all that. We just, when we start, we don't really believe it and we don't trust it. And we're not sensitive to it. But as soon as you really become in touch with your body, you don't need any of that external validation of scores. It's just, you just know what feels good, and you know how on point you are because you're so used to doing it.
It's the same with the breath hold and how long you can hold your breath. You know, at first you're, hey, I can hit the 4 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is, and after that you I don't know if you, but I let go of that, just enjoying and appreciating that, but not being, you know, result oriented. Oh, you know, I don't need to do a screenshot of my app to show up.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you know what? It's great, and same with time and the ice. Like, they are great metrics to have, and the goals do have meaning for what's going on in your body, but they're not as sensitive and not as accurate and not as beautiful as the true meaning you get when you let go of that stuff and you're able to just tap inside. And that's what I loved about the Buteyko method originally, is they did have goals to breathing, which was never done in the West, ever. And they did try and integrate that into the medical community and what would the word be? Make it relate to the overall health status of the body, which is beautiful for people starting off, and I think is really important. But then again, like yourself, you get to that level where you don't need them anymore. You know what feels good, and you know how good you want to feel on that day. So I'll check in with the breath. If I want to do some breath work, I'll do it. I'll do whole body movement work, and I'll get outside. They're my basics. After that, it's, you know, I'll have as much fun in my day as I can. I have a wife and 3 children, so I really focus on trying to create space to play every day as well, and connect that way to my family.
Good man. Good man. Yes. No, it's chasing the fun. I fully support that.
Yeah, it was funny. I was listening to, and I know you're connected with her, Rebecca Coles of Sport Rest Yoga. She put up a post yesterday, and it was, you know, what is the one thing all athletes say they stay in their sport for? And people gave answers like breathing and exercise and health, and then she's like, no, it's play. Like, that's why everybody does it, right? Like, that's why kids do stuff. You try ask a kid to do something and they're not enjoying it, oh man, it's a disaster.
Yes,
You gotta make it fun.
I did reply to that, and I read a study, and was done by an Australian PhD researcher, and she researched what makes a multi-gold medalist. Someone who's not just lucky once, but has won at least twice a gold medal at the Olympics. And they only had 2 things in common, and had nothing to do with diet. And the number one was they had strong connection in their life, whether it was their coach, their family, their partner, but they had someone to share whatever was going on. So it was that idea of not storing negative emotions inside, but just having a safe space to let it out. And believe it or not, ice baths. So
really, yeah.
You can research, you can check that. It's out there. So I was really, really happy to see that. So more and more people are coming to the ice.
Yeah, well, I like, as I says, I live in Ireland, and Irish people we're an interesting bunch. So we are. We're quite a simple folk altogether. And there's been people, and I especially look locally, like they're in their 70s and 80s, and they sea swim. We got the sea all around us, and they've been sea swimming for decades, and they're in their 70s and 80s and 90s, absolute decades. And like, they see me come along, and they might see me doing breath work or doing some movement, and they're like, look at this guy, like, you don't need to do any of that stuff. Just get in, will you? Like, it's real old school, which is beautiful. But it's amazing in the last 2 to 3 years, the amount of young people, and when I say young, I'm talking 20s and 30s, and people in their 20s and 30s that are coming to the water that I see every single day is incredible. They're not measuring the temperature of anything. Most of them won't even go through winter, but you can see the numbers building and building and building, both summer and winter. It's just incredible to see.
We are animals. It's common sense, you know. Once you do it, it's not rocket science. It's just reconnecting with our deepest part of our physiology, and just letting go of all these, you know, these nightmares that are ruining our life and our world and our connections, and going back to the root and going back to the essential. So yeah, and bless Wim for being an incredible ambassador of that. So he's open for a lot of people, because he made it mainstream, basically. You know, it's like,
yeah, I think so. I think there's still, like, it's funny because you still come across hundreds of people in my life that they're like, no, never heard of it, never done it. Obviously, when you become aware of it, it's around you everywhere, and it is your
like
life.
everything.
But yeah, like everything.
But he's going on Hollywood. In Hollywood now, he's doing a movie about him. So that's gonna be another level.
Exactly, and it's great, you know. And it's funny because I see more variety of it. What I want to see is the simplicity. I want to see, at least in the people that I work with, it is simple. It's really, really simple. It's simple to restore your breathing. It's simple to get into the ice and to get your learnings from it. That's not to say it's easy. It's not easy, but it is simple. And I think that as I love to play with different methods and different techniques. And this is what I think the world has done for the last kind of 5-6 years, or at least my world that I've dived into the last 5 or 6 years. But it's only in the last couple of months that I see people realizing, hold on a second, there's common threads in here, and it's not as complex, and it's not as You know, it's not that one person is better than another and one method is better than another and this gives you amazing benefits and this other one doesn't. It's that, you know what, all of it is innate to us. We're animals, as you said, Alex, and it's all inside us. It's all inside us, and the keys to unlocking it is inside us and just doing it.
So Leo, more personal question. What do you think the method, whether it's breath work, one or the other, and the ice has changed in your life? You know, besides the asthma that you described, maybe in your level of connections with people, how do you feel that has had an impact?
Well, the first you would say is on a physical level, yes, I cured the asthma. Then as I began to peel back and practice, I mean, then it went into meditation for me. And then from there, it went into a variety of different techniques and just discovering, it's like art, right? Discovering how to paint more. So the way I would describe it is it helped me to connect with myself first and who I am. A part of that is my career and where that's led to. And obviously as I know who I am more, then I connect with more people like me. And so I get to enjoy people's company a hell of a lot more, as opposed to the people that I might have grown up with who I didn't have anything in common with or less in common with. And so it was a different type of relationship when I was younger. Now, when I meet people, you kind of get that connection because you know yourself. You get that connection with people automatically, and you get drawn to people, and you end up having deeper conversations with people and having more fun with people the whole time.
Yeah, I fully
So
that.
yeah, and that's first of all, and then the ice, I suppose, as a part of it all, it's just, do you know what, it helps you to realize the potential that's within you, because it is something that everybody dislikes and even hates. But when you are able to set a challenge, first of all, in a controlled environment like an ice bath, it is controlled, it's safe, it's not like you're going to lose your footing in it. It's not like, you know, you're out in the wilds in the wilderness. It's a modern day approach to cold exposure. So as you do that and you begin to peel back the layers, you realize that you have way more potential in you than you ever had. And so as you get to know yourself, as you get inspired by the people around you, as you connect with people around you, you then start to, in my opinion, you start to develop where it is you want to go in life, your vision of life, and that gives you a deeper meaning and connection into who you are as well. And that's kind of the path. It helps you to meander down, and you don't have to think too deeply about it. You can just do it, and the teachings will unfold before you. Like life will give you those teachings as you go with it.
Yeah, you know what you just said reinforces for me the idea that we come to it. You know, when Wim is doing the marketing, is happy, strong, healthy. You know, it's like pretty basic stuff, but what you get out of it is much more spiritual than that, and it's not even necessary to advertise it. You get it as almost as a side benefit, and that's so I have two more questions, and I'm conscious of your time. Wife and kids, do they do it?
Nope. No, no, I'm a bit hard on that. The kids, I've been working with the kids with general, just everyday breathing. My kids have taught me so much. For example, the eldest one was born with a cord wrapped around her throat, so she's very prone to panic. And there's lots of other stuff, but that's the most simplest way to describe it. Has had that from birth. The next one, a beautiful breathing and an amazing immune system up until she was about 4 years of age, and she got a virus for the second time, which completely sent her immune system into orbit, and that changed her breathing patterns. And then the third one, Juliet, they're all girls. She would be, she had a twin in the womb and lost a twin. and she's always had a very strong emotional connection and need for particularly her mom. And she'd be very soft person in that sense. And even as I watch them grow up and go with them, like I'd be I'm a trainer, so I'm quite a hard person on the exterior. So learning how to soften into that and go with that and show them how breathing is important in many different ways has kind of been my greatest lesson with that. So they do practice breathing, but not necessarily formal breathing practices. So that, like, my favorite technique that I'll do with them is smell the hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, they all love it. The kids get it. Again, it's fun, so they're gonna do it, right? And as they grow older, like the eldest one now is, she's into dance and really wants to do well in dancing. So she's connecting into kind of performance motivators for it, which is beautiful.
Oh.
My wife then, she does a little bit of it, and she does a little bit of different breathing techniques. She's done the Wim Hof method. She's done a load of them with me over time. But she's had her own pathway in life too, which has been, she hasn't needed to do it like I've done it.
Yeah.
So I've needed to do it, and that's been my dharma, if you want, my life path.
Yeah.
Has she got into the ice? Yeah, she has. Does she do it regularly? No. Does she do it every time I host a workshop in the garden now? Yeah. That's my way of getting her in.
Nice, nice.
So I would consider her like a beginner, and she kind of dips in every now and again, but it's not something that she's come to really integrate into her life path. She has other stuff that she's wonderful at. So, and again, well, I'm okay with all of that. It's that's the joy of life, right? You don't marry the person who's the exact same as you.
No, and I love the softness about it. Of course.
Yeah, yeah. You got. I learned from being a trainer for a long time I'm a trainer in work. I'm not a trainer at home. Yeah. I'm a husband, a partner, a dad, a lover. That's who I am at home. So I got to separate that out and not push so hard, right?
Yeah. So, Leo, what else would you like to share with everyone? Is there anything that we didn't approach that you wanted to express?
I think, you know what, if you're here right now and you're listening to us, you're already interested in that. I suppose if I can offer any advice, it's find the fun in it, find the play in it, and keep exploring and developing yourself, and let go of the need to be an Iceman or an Ice Woman. Let go of the need to be perfect, and just enjoy the exploration of it. I think is the best approach that I've found to the whole thing. And you know, you're doing wonderful just exactly where you are and as you are. Life has brought you here to this point on purpose, and who knows what's down the road for you. So just enjoy it.
Wise words. Where can we find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. On Instagram, it's at I am Leo Daniel. I use most of my personal stuff anyway. On Facebook, it's Leo Daniel Ryan. I do have a website called innate-strength.com. So innate, like innerstrength.com. And any of my online programs that I do, and coaching that I do, and workshops that I have on, and events that I host are all on there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Otherwise you'll find me in Ireland in the sea.
Yeah. Let's watch the crazy Irishmen. There are quite a few out there enjoing the
loads
of winter. All right, brother. Thank you so much for the time, and everyone else. I hope you enjoyed. Please ask some questions. Give us some feedback. If you like those videos, just keep sharing them, and enjoy the breath. Reconnect with your breath. Find your breath and enjoy the ice. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Beautiful, Alex.
All right.